Facebook Live edition of the Golden View podcast. For Friday, May the 3rd, 2024, a returning guest, my friend Niall O'Donohoe from C's Plus Baseball. Niall, how are you?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. So let's just get right into this because we've been sharing before we started how we've had involvement, in the first month of the season with the Vancouver Canadians, and just the first month of their season. I'm going to drop a link in here to Batters Box. You and I are both writing for Batters Box now. Batters Box is a site dedicated to the Toronto Blue Jays, run by Jerry McDonald, who was a guest on the podcast last October. But you and I are doing the minor league updates each one day a week. So let's dive right into those while I find Batters Box, because you're able to, in a weekly minor league summary, really understand what's going on with the Vancouver Canadians, right? Because in the first month of the season, what do you think's been happening besides obviously all the home games being rained out?
Well, the Canadians, they went up against the top two teams in the Northwest League so far in Spokane and Eugene, and it looks like it's going to be Spokane and Eugene will be fighting it out unless things drastically turn around. I mean, there's still, about 6-7 weeks left to go until the first half comes to an end.
Right.
But Spokane and Eugene, they've really taken care of business, unfortunately, against the Canadians. Spokane 5-0. Right. And unfortunately, the Canadians had no chance to get any ground back against Spokane because of not one, not two, not three, but 4 consecutive rainouts. And I've never heard of that before. I mean, we did go through 3 last year, but
never in one series that I could ever hear, though, right? Like 4 days in a row. And that's like the Thursday night game was canceled last week. We'll do the Friday doubleheader. Then the Friday game was canceled. Move it to a Saturday doubleheader. And then I was there working. I work part-time for the Canadians now as well, doing fan services. And I showed up for Sunday's game to work. And then Sunday's game was canceled. So that was that series against Spokane. I was at Tuesday night's game working, and Spokane won that one. And then in last Wednesday's game against Spokane, the Canadians came close in the bottom of the 9th, being down 5-1. And I'm trying to remember who hit the 3-run homer.
That would have been Jackson Hernung.
Jackson Hernung, that's right. And so Jackson hit that home run that got it closer, but then the Canadians fell short of that rally in the 9th. So you think it's going to be Eugene and Spokane in the first half, or do you think they're going to be the sort of like the dominant 2 teams in the first half of this season?
It's looking that way right now, but again, a lot can change. But right now, Spokane's looking very strong. So is Eugene. The Canadians, I'll be honest, I thought the way Spokane swept the Canadians in Spokane to open the regular season, I kind of saw similarities to how Vancouver was able to turn the tables on teams last year with comeback victories. Of course, Vancouver had 12 walk-off victories a year ago on the way to the Northwest League Championship. But Spokane, they were pulling out games, out of the fire. And really, Vancouver could have easily have won maybe 1 or 2 of those games anyway. And it just wasn't in the cards for them. And Eugene, they were maybe a play or 2 away from at least getting a split, if not a series win in Oregon. But again, it didn't work out. So right now, the Canadians just trying to kind of find their identity right now. They're kind of, looking at all the hitting and pitching categories. Everything's middle of the pack, and that kind of reflects in the standings right now. Canadians middle of the pack. They had a chance to try and reach the 500 mark. Off to a good start in their series against Tri-City, but losing a heartbreaker yesterday, spoiling a great effort by Chris McIlvaine. Best start as a Canadian with 1 run over 6 frames.
Nice. Yeah, I'm just actually going to share those here, and I'm going to repurpose this to the Golden View Podcast YouTube channel, and then obviously to our Buzzsprout page on the audio portion. But let's take a quick share on those standings, because I think it's really important to look at those standings and just see where things are at, right? Because the minor league season is an interesting season. I mean, this is a 133 game Northwest League season, for those of you who don't know listening to the podcast. And there is two halves, and there's 6 teams. Vancouver is the only Canadian team. Not that part really matters, but we're looking at it from the perspective of there's still a ways to go, even in the first half.
That's right. And really, the key is right now for the Canadians to try to keep their head above water. I mean,
Right.
yeah, I mean, things aren't looking great right now for the first half, but they still need to try to put as many wins in the bank because you never know. It could come down. Sorry, if I can get my words out correctly. It
Okay.
could come down in the second half, perhaps to a tiebreaker
Right.
scenario. I mean, take last year, for example. The Canadians winning the first half, but I believe it was Eugene, Everett, and Spokane all finishing tied for second place with 32 wins apiece. And so you never know. That's why the Canadians, they just try not to let it get away from them too badly here. And I think that's all they can do right now. But, again, things can change. I mean, I look at Hillsborough for an example last year. Not a great first half at all. But second half, they substantially improved and certainly gave the Canadians all they could handle last September, taking 5 out of 6 at Nat Bailey Stadium. I mean, lots of things can account for that. Of course, you get a draft class coming in, new players. There's always new players coming and going, promotions, demotions, that sort of thing. So we haven't really seen a whole lot of roster turnover yet with the Canadians, but I imagine that's going to be coming soon. I mean, you're seeing guys now starting to find their way in Dunedin and guys finding their way here in Vancouver. And I think that's going to lead to some promotions eventually. And the roster will be changing significantly as the season goes on.
So who do you think's moving up and down? Because we talked about Jackson Hornigan, and there's some names that I want to talk about. I'll let you share, and then I'll share because there's a couple observations that I have.
Well, I think right now, if I had to go on the pitching side, I think the one guy who jumps out to me right away is Naswell Paulino. He's been off to a terrific start in 2024. I don't think he's allowed a run as of yet. And he's been with the Canadians now for, well, really the better part of 2 seasons now.
That's what I thought. He's been here for a while.
Yeah, he did have one appearance in New Hampshire last year, but was returned to the team. So he's been here for 3 years now. He's off to a good start. I'm sure we're not going to be seeing too much more of Naswell Paulino. I mean, it's bad for the Canadians, but it's great for him. Just a quality individual, really nice kid, and I love to see him go on to New Hampshire and continue to do well. I mean, I certainly enjoyed getting to know Naswell over the past couple of years. Just a good guy all around, and I think for sure he's going to be heading on up. I wonder about perhaps like a Justin Kelly. I think he could be on the way up too. He's off to a pretty decent start. Those are a couple of guys I can think of. Maybe on the hitting side, perhaps Ryan McCarty.
I was going to say Ryan McCarty. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see him being here definitely for the whole year. And I think Deshaun Brown as well. I think, he got off to a bit of a tough start, but he has been improving lately. He had, a couple of days ago, he was on base 5 times, stole 3 bases in one game. So I don't think he's going to be here too much longer as well. So those are some of the names that jump out to me as far as guys who should be moving on. Again, Deshaun Brown, again, he's been here for 2022, the latter part of that season, of course, with us in 2023 and back again in 2024. The Canadians, they're just hoping right now they can kind of, just enjoy what they can out of Deshaun Brown and guys like Justin Kelly and Naswell Paulino before they do move on to bigger and better things with AA New Hampshire and then, of course, AAA Buffalo. And then hopefully after that, the major leagues with the Blue Jays.
Yeah, because there's one thing that we talked about. I'm going to share the Batter's Box site in the chat because last week's Batter's Box that I did for Wednesday, April 24th, Addison Barger got his call up to the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, which was just awesome for him. So, I'll tell you what, that was a player who probably stayed in Vancouver a lot longer than really he should have. He was absolutely dominating in the Northwest League. Certainly got to see him crush a number of home runs over the right field wall at Nat Bailey Stadium. His swan song that season came in Everett, his hometown, where he was born in Bellevue, Washington. Of course, he was raised in Florida, but kind of a homecoming for Addison Barger of sorts. And I believe his last game, 3 doubles. And next thing you know, he got called up and went on to bigger and better things. Kind of a step back in 2023, but he really started off the season very well with the Bisons. And, I'm not sure if Addison's going to be remaining with the Blue Jays roster for much longer because Nathan Lucas has been promoted from AAA Buffalo. I haven't heard yet what the corresponding roster move will be. There is talk it might be Addison who goes down, but I'm sure we're going to see him back. And at least he did get his first major league hit. Had a tough major league debut in the field and left field, but considering he hadn't played the position before at all, he certainly played right field with the Bisons. A bit of a tough start, but he did get his first major league hit, so at least he has that, and actually wound up scoring the winning run in the Blue Jays game against Kansas City. So I'm sure we're going to be hearing more from Addison Barger down the line.
Yeah, I just remember watching him 2 years ago in Vancouver in probably April or May, and then you and I connected around then to have you do the occasional guest appearance here on the Golden View podcast. And you had mentioned that to me about Addison before, just how long he was or how long he'd been in Vancouver and how he'd sort of outgrown it. And he went straight to New Hampshire with the Fisher Cats for the Double-A. And then he, was with the Bisons last season. Let's go through a couple more on the Canadians roster. I was sharing the Desan Brown bio and breakdown, and I heard another podcast recently that you helped set up. A gentleman by the name of KP Wee had interviewed Desan, and I found it on Twitter, so I had to listen to it. So that was kind of interesting. And Ryan McCarty, I had obviously seen the games that I worked for the season April at Nat Bailey, and he had some good games there. Looking at the roster, who else stands out to you? Brown. What about someone like Dylan Rock?
Dylan Rock, he hasn't had a whole lot of playing time. He's kind of been battling for outfield playing time, and kind of weird that he's only now with Vancouver, considering he signed with the organization as a free agent. I believe it was out of Texas A&M, if memory serves. He joined the Dunedin Blue Jays, and then spent the majority of last year at Double-A New Hampshire. So he bypassed Vancouver completely. I thought he was going to be a player we were going to see, but next thing you know, he is back with Vancouver, or actually gets to go to Vancouver for the first time. So he's trying to find his way. But you ask about players who have stood out to me. I think Jace Borfin has. He hasn't been exactly clearing the wall, but I'll tell you what, he's been getting a share of doubles, and he's drawing a lot of walks. So he's shown a really good eye at the plate. Very first plate appearance in Vancouver during that preseason game against UBC.
Right, I was
he hit
looking
one
at
right
too.
out of the ballpark.
I remember that.
Yeah, he hasn't done it since yet at the Nat, but hopefully they'll be coming next week against Everett. So be nice. But I'll tell you what, he's really shown a good approach. I mean, considering he opened his pro career with a bang, I believe it was 6 home runs and 16 games with Dunedin, and there was some thought that maybe he was going to join the Canadians for their playoff drive in 2023. It didn't work out that way. Nick Goodwin was the one who got the call up out of the 2023 draft class, and of course we remember what Nick Goodwin did in Game 4, hitting the home run to really cap off a huge 10-2 victory against the Everett Aqua Sox. Nick Goodwin has stood out as well. He's been the main man at shortstop so far. He's been getting his share of walks too as well. So both of those guys have been showing pretty good approaches at the plate for the most part, and those are really two names that have stood out for me as well.
Okay, that's good to know. Anybody else on the roster? I'm just looking and sharing the. I've seen Estevan Machado play a bit. What about a catcher between Kike Rios, Jackson Horning, and Yomer Hernandez? Who stands out to you there?
Well, Jomer Hernandez, very good when it comes to throwing out base stealers. I believe it was around a 35 to 40% clip for his career so far with the Canadians. So certainly that's been his strong suit. Has been able to contribute some big hits with the bat as well. Jackson Horning, he's really come on as of late. He's certainly had a pretty strong 5 or 6 games. I believe he had a 6-game hitting streak, including that home run last week against Spokane. I'll tell you what, he hit that one a long way, dead center field. He really, I would love to have seen how long that ball went out of the yard, and certainly the exit velocity was pretty impressive too. You knew that was not going to stay in the park, the way he crushed that ball. But this is the guy, Jackson Hornung, who is batting over 400, I believe it was, in Division III for Skidmore College, a thoroughbred. So Division III out in New York State. So pretty interested to see what he's going to be able to accomplish as the season goes along. Kei Rios, unfortunately, got hurt during the opening homestand against Hillsborough. He was with the Canadians last year and contributed some big hits. He was responsible for one of the 12 walk-off wins for the Canadians last year. But right now he's on the shelf. So it's basically been Jomer Hernandez and Jackson Hornung right now carrying the load behind the plate. But yeah, I'm interested to see how Hornung is going to progress. So far, off to a pretty decent start here in the month of April.
Okay, I got one final thing for you, just from looking at Wednesday's batter's box summary that I wrote this week. The 5-0 win by the Canadians in that game over Tri-City. So Vancouver won Monday or Tuesday and Wednesday's game against Tri-City. You said they lost Thursdays in Tri-City.
That's right. Yeah, 3-2.
But two guys that stood out. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, they were walked off, unfortunately, but they've taken 2 out of 3 so far in Tri-City.
And the outing by Ryan Jennings and Rafael Ohashi in that game, they held Tri-Cities in 7 innings to no runs. Ohashi got the win to move to 2-0. What are your impressions of those two young pitchers? Because it sounded like that game, those guys just basically completely neutralized the Tri-City Dust Devils offense.
Well, Ryan Jennings, we didn't get to see a whole lot of him last season. Of course, he was on the shelf for a bit when he was promoted to Vancouver last year, but he came back for a regular season start in Tri-City, as it turned out, and then, of course, was the starting pitcher for Game 4, setting the tone with 3 shutout innings and striking out 5. And Jennings did take the loss in that Hillsborough homestand, but I believe of the 4 runs, I think only one of them was earned, and he didn't pitch as bad as maybe the pitch line indicated, but he certainly was on his game in his last start earlier this week at Tri-City. Only threw 53 pitches over 4 shutout innings, and I was kind of surprised he didn't get a 5th inning, but again, I guess maybe coming off injury, and they want to get guys like maybe Rafael Ohashi, try and stretch him out. Ohashi now going 3 innings, so I'm wondering if maybe there's going to be perhaps a plan that Ohashi might see a start or 2 maybe down the line, trying to build his workload up. And you have to consider as well, you have 4 rainouts to make up for in the first half, and I don't think it has been announced yet. I think the plan is, because the Canadians have a road series in Spokane, they'll probably try to make up 2 of those games there at Avista Stadium, and then when the Canadians are back at home against Spokane in June, I think that's where they're going to try and maybe make up the other 2 games. At least that's the speculation I've heard. That hasn't been confirmed as of yet. But so, I mean, they're going to have to need guys who are going to soak up some innings, and maybe Rafael Ohashi, coming off an injury. I mean, he was a starter starting out. He had 10 strikeouts one game back in low A with Dunedin over 4 innings. So maybe the design is for him, maybe eventually that Ohashi will see more innings and maybe get a few starts down the line for the 2024 Canadians.
Yeah, it's always good to have you on now because you have so much information and you give me all this info that I don't know about. And I had actually speculated and wonder when I was at the games last week working what was going to happen with those makeup games in Spokane and how it worked with the rules, because those are official league games that have to be made up, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out how they were going to do it, if they play those same teams again in the first half to make up those official games, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I just can't see either team agreeing to, let's have 4 doubleheaders in a 6-game series. I mean, that will tax the pitching staff.
No kidding.
That will tax the pitching staff to the limit. So that's how I think they're going to do it. That was a speculation I heard from both us and from the Spokane organization. So I think that's probably how it's going to shake down, that there's going to be a couple of extra games for the folks in Spokane. So, I mean, good for them. They get to enjoy extra baseball, but unfortunately at our expense. But, but those games will be made up. It's just a matter of exactly how they'll do it. So,
all right. Now, well, thanks again for being a guest as always. And we'll catch up with you again next month for
Sounds good.
month 2 May breakdown of the season, and we're going to wrap it up there.